And of course, this is Marci Powell, the woman in the hot seat. We would like to thank Horse Expo Canada for having us and featuring this so that we could get to know these amazing people better.
Maybe quickly introduce ourselves a little bit so people have an idea of the keeners in this side of the chair.
Kylie and I both started off as the people attending these expos and loving all of these clinicians. And right up to now, we have the pleasure and the privilege of being clinicians in this expo as well.
Yeah.
Just both grew up with horses. Both have kind of ventured off on paths that actually go very well together.
Yeah.
So that's what puts us here.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So with the Horseman's Hot Seat, we aren't here to grill anyone, but we just noticed coming to these expos that a lot of times these clinicians have incredible insights, techniques, things to offer us, but we don't always get a space to hear a little bit more about the life behind the face. And so, you know, how these people got to where they got to is an incredible wealth of knowledge. We can learn a lot from people's stories and testimonies, and so we're really excited to be able to ask some questions, make some space, and hear a little more from you, Marci. Yeah, I don't know if you want to share a little, or where should we jump into? Right off in the questions,
I would like
just to
that.
start?
Just Marci, if you could just give us a brief,
Yeah.
like what discipline is it that you specialize in?
Thank you.
Yeah, what puts you here?
Yes, thank you.
Probably the grace of God probably put me here. But I want to thank you both for, first of all, for being so creative and having this. It's so needed in our industry. I have been training horses most of my life, and it started off. My dad was a great horseman. I was really fortunate, and I trained my first horse when I was 14 years old. We bought a pack horse of the mountains. I called him Barney because he'd suck back to the barn and he wouldn't leave. And I remember telling my dad, I said, he's never going to make a barrel horse. And he's like, well, that's going to be up to you whether he's going to be one or not. So that was in '83, and in 1984 he entered me in the richest pro rodeo in Canada in the barrel race. And at that time Calgary didn't have 50,000, so Craven, Saskatchewan put up $7,000 in the barrel racing, which was unheard of. We weren't an equal event then, and he entered me, and I'm like, you know, I hadn't won anything on this colt, and we didn't have jackpots back then. And he's like, well, I said, I don't think I can do anything there, Dad. And he's like, well, that's up to you. And so we loaded up and went there, and I won the rodeo. I sent him up the racetrack, and we ran a 1693, and we won the rodeo, and paid like $2,800 to win. And he was right. It's up to me. And it instilled that, you know, my belief that if you really want something, you work for it. And, you know, so I think that's the message I really want out there, that if some girl can take a, you know, pack horse of the mountains and make him, you know, he was half thoroughbred out of a double bit. He was a nice run-in horse. You know, my dad knew run-in horses. He was a quality horse, but he darn sure wasn't broke. And if I can make my dreams come true, I'm just here to tell other people you can as well.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Marci.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Totally. That sense of agency that, like, when you bring yourself to the table, you can really influence
And it
how
really
things
is
turn
up to
out.
us.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, and that's what Dad said. You know, you can't, if you're going to live your life based on other people's opinions of you, you won't get very far, because that's, you know, but your only limits are what you believe in, and whether you want to make that horse into something or whether you want to make yourself into something, it really is up to you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, we have a couple questions.
Oh.
We would love to
Drill
send
me.
your way. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but I know you know nothing about being under pressure.
No,
so
no
I don't
pressure.
feel too
No
bad
pressure
about
at
it.
all. Yeah.
And just to preface the questions, Kylie and I came up with a few of the questions that we thought you all would want to hear about. And then some of them were actually adopted from Tim Ferriss's book, Tribe of Mentors. I don't know if anybody's read that, but it's essentially questions that he asks people that are excellent in their field. And so we just thought that really applied well here. So we have a few questions for Marci. We'll start off with a horse-related question. What attributes are must-haves when purchasing a horse for you?
I think that's a funny question because I just bought 2 this week.
That's timely.
Perfect.
That's,
Yeah,
yep, okay.
yeah. Bloodlines, you know, they say you can't ride papers, but when you've trained as long as I have and have been in the industry as long and swung your leg over so many colts, you know what bloodlines you can get along with, right? You know, and so for me, I do look at the papers first.
Okay.
And that's not promoting one stallion. I'm not going into bloodlines. I just know what works for me.
Yes.
That's from the School of Hard Knocks, though.
Yep.
And that's just from riding, you know, so many horses through the years, so many outside horses and so many. So I bought papers first. I bought them both sight unseen, just videos and pictures. But I do like a running horse that looks like a cow horse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I am running kind of a riding a racehorse looking horse today, but if you look through my career, what I won most on were horses that could run, but they looked like a cow. You know, I think that's the best way to describe them. You know,
Yeah.
big hip and
Totally.
yeah, you know, 15, 1, kind of just
Okay.
little rocket ships that will run out from underneath you.
Okay.
So I look for that. So I want the short back, long underline. I want a shoulder, you know, sloping shoulder, sloping pasterns. I like things close to the ground, meaning knees and hocks close to the ground.
Yeah.
They can just, you know, they just can stay on the ground. Like my dad said, you almost want a horse to run like a gopher, meaning, you know, they almost drop and run.
Okay.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, because they don't spend any time in the air.
Yep.
So those are kind of things that I have to have.
Okay.
Color doesn't matter to me. The electric timer doesn't care what color they are.
Right.
And so I don't get too hung up on that kind of stuff. I just know what I can get along with and
Yep.
what I can train.
Yep.
And that's how I purchase them.
Cool.
Okay.
I don't mind a small-eyed horse, and I say that at my clinics. You know, those I call them like pig-eyed horses or goat-eyed horses. And the reason being is, first of all, we're not a judged event; we're a timed event. But I have not shone away from them, only in the fact that those horses will mother up to a barrel. They will not want to go by a barrel. They'll lock onto a barrel, especially in a big outside pen like if you're like Pinoca Stampede. Those
Okay.
horses are fun because the last thing they want to do is go to the grandstand because they don't see real well, right?
Oh,
They don't see.
interesting.
Yeah, they don't. You know, those big old eyes. They're pretty, but they'll see
Yeah.
a lot more. Them
That makes sense.
yeah, them little hide horses. They'll just mother up to the barrel because whatever's out there, they don't see real well, and it's scary. So, that's kind of a thing too. I have. It's just
Okay.
That makes so much sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
They're
you
not.
wouldn't-
They're tough to ride inside, though.
Oh,
You know, you definitely want a bigger-eyed horse inside that'll brave to run in the walls. But those little-eyed horses, I'm not afraid to buy them
Yeah.
and run them in a big pen.
Okay. Very
That makes
cool.
so much sense, and also something you probably wouldn't ever hear unless someone's learned it through the School of Hard Knocks and
School of Hard
lots
Knocks.
of experience. Like that's pretty cool.
But they're kind of a pain to warm up.
Yeah.
You know, they'll spook it. I always say they see dead people, but because they'll see things. It's like there's nothing there, but they see
right.
something to spook at.
Right.
But they're fun to run, but hard to ride.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. We got another question for you. This one is a little more on the personal side. So, in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Realizing that, you know, that you don't have to go. You know, I think we get hung up in our game about, you know, well, there's a barrel race and there's 10,000 added, or there's a rodeo that you got to enter up. You know, like entries come around for Pinoca, or they come around, you know, for big rodeos like Wainwright and Armstrong, and you think you got to enter up. And maybe you're just not, your horse just isn't there yet, or, you know, and he's maybe not going to be handling things, that it's okay. That it's okay, you know, or you know, or it's minus 18. You don't have to go that jackpot because that one jackpot really, in the whole realm of your career, isn't going to change that. And I think that was it, to get a better perspective on just doing and going where that horse you think will shine. And sometimes you enter up. I entered Pinoca last year thinking that my big horse would shine, and we didn't shine there at all.
Right.
We fell down, but you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's-
you're human, and you make choices that,
Yeah.
you know, he obviously wasn't ready to handle the ground, the rodeo ground.
Absolutely.
But,
Okay.
you know,
You
always
wouldn't
learn.
know until you try.
You don't, but you also, you know, you look back, and now I wouldn't enter him this year.
Right.
You know what I mean? I
Live
just
and
wouldn't enter
learn.
up on him. He's not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good feedback. Almost
but-
seems like there's a great value in the dialogue of it, because
Yeah.
it's like if I have to go, it's quite
A
rigid.
lot of pressure on, yeah.
And so it's
yeah.
like just to be able to have that
And in our
conversation.
industry too, it's like, well, why isn't she entered, or why isn't she going, or is her horse hurt, you know, or you know, and you get a lot of that. And I had to step back and realize that, you know, because you can get funneled into that, and you'll see girls hauling horses, and it's real cold, and it's just, you know, you just want to say it, you know, the whole realm of your career, that's really not going to make that. It could make a difference if that horse horse gets pneumonia.
Right.
But it's not going to make a big difference if you miss it. So
Huh.
that was a big thing for me to try to get over.
That's huge. Well, and I would imagine that like the competitive spirit requires you to be quite detail oriented a lot of the time. So you kind of like, even I think of like running a barrel pattern, like you've got to be able to like dial right in, get really focused in one moment. So when you're training at that, in that mindset all the time, sometimes to zoom out at the big picture, get that perspective, it takes intentionality because it's probably not going to happen by default.
Yeah. You know, and these horses, they just do it for us. You know, they don't, you know, they do it because they love us and they, you know, and sometimes we just got to step back and realize, are we doing what's best for a horse or doing what's best for us?
Right.
So huge.
You got to be a horseman first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
That also kind of reminds me just that mindset you're talking about. A mentor of mine, Glenn Stewart, he always said, we get to, we don't got to.
Amen.
You know, and I feel like that's what you're saying. And it changes the whole spirit and intention of what you're doing with your horse and how you go about it when you think of it that way. Because you're right, this is like a privileged life that we live.
It is very privileged, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I give my horse a great life for sure. He gets, you know, he has everything he ever needed. He wants for nothing, or they don't. You know, I give them. I love my horses. You know, they're my kids and my family. But I've had to understand that they, you know, is it best for them?
Yeah.
Or is it best for my ego? Because if it's best for my ego, that's not the right reason why you should be entered.
For sure.
That's a very good point.
That's so good.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. I really like this one because I feel like we learn so much from our failures, and it's not something often that we want to discuss. It's not like the shiny pieces, but it's where the real learning, I feel, happens. So this one is, how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? And do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Well, you know, I think you don't get to have any success unless you've had a lot of failure. You know, there's no shortcuts in this game, and it is blood, sweat, and tears, especially if you're a horse trainer. If you're, you know, if you're writing a check, maybe you shortcut it a little bit, and I respect that you did because I make a living doing that by training and selling horses. But if you're an actual trainer, you learn by a whole lot of failure, and you learn that failure, you learn to embrace it. And, you know, if there's a favorite failure, I guess it would be, you know, something that evolved through years. So in 1988, my horses I was entered in Calgary, and I was entered up, and my horse decides all of a sudden not to turn the first barrel. I mean, right? Yeah, not a good time.
No.
And so I'd heard about this vet by Sherwood Park that was injecting hocks. And I'd never heard anything like that. It was never in the 80s. We didn't know anything about it. So I went in there, and it was Dr. Briggs, and he injected hocks his hocks. And I cried all the way home because I thought he hurt my horse. You know, I'd never seen anything like it. It was back then. And anyway, we went on and we made the short round Calgary, and you know, it had a great year. But one thing I learned from that, and I've continued on, is vet work. You know, horses, you can't train through pain. Right. And when your horse isn't working, they don't just wake up one day and go, I'm not going to turn the second barrel today. Not today. No, we're not doing it. Right. And so I think the failure, as far as, you know, not trusting my gut all the time, you know, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so you know your horse better than anybody, and they don't have the ability to think that, just not today.
Totally.
You know, we're no longer doing this game. They just try their heart out. Or they wouldn't have got to that level anyway. So you gotta, I regret not going to the vets and doing my vet work, you know, looking for that source, whatever it is, sooner sometimes on some horses.
Right. Yeah.
Because I should have known better.
Well, and it's just a great learning piece around, like, that's how they talk. Like, when they say no with different things, is like, that's how they're trying to talk to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the thing that probably if there was regret, but I had to learn from that. But so my first go-to anymore, though, and somebody says, you know, here's my video, my horse has not turned the first barrel. I'm like, what did your vet say? And, you know, and if their vet didn't say anything, I'm like, well, what did your second vet say? Like, I'm not afraid to use 2 or 3 of them if I got to. Because they are human. They're all great, but they're not God. And they're, you know, it's veterinary practice.
Yes.
As my one vet
Things
says.
can get missed.
They practice, they do practice, and it's like anything. It's like doctors or anything. They do miss stuff. So trust your gut. You know your horse better than anybody. And I can promise you one thing about this, being a horsewoman, is your horses don't just quit working for no reason.
Yep. Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I almost want to weave a quick impromptu question in just on this theme of trusting your gut, because
Do
I
it.
think that's a really big piece of even I think of my own growth in my horsemanship. Like there have been moments where my gut said something and I was trying to make someone else happy, and it usually put me in a bad spot, and then you learn from a failure. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, how did you learn to trust your gut more?
Just failure.
Yeah.
I honestly, failure is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's not a bad F word.
Yeah.
It really isn't. There is nobody that has been successful without a lot of failure. And I
Right.
think I always tell people that, when I'm teaching you and I make you uncomfortable, get excited, because you're about to level up.
Right.
Getting out of your comfort
I
zone.
like that.
Yeah,
Right.
getting out of your comfort zone. And it's the same thing with failure. I'm like, I learned from that, but look out now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Use
look
it.
out now. Yeah, use it positive.
Yeah.
Twist it and make it something, and it's the same as comfort zones.
Yeah.
I always tell girls too, the very first thing I say when they're in the clinics is, if you're here today and you're not going to learn, and you think you're done learning, you're done winning. You might as well sell everything.
Yeah. The
Right,
journey's
you're
not
done.
Yeah.
Because you'll never stop learning in this game.
Yeah.
You'll never stop, and you got to
that's a
stay an
good
eternal
thing.
student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eternal students.
Yep.
Eternal students. It's why we're just laughing that before we went on mic, that 13 years ago I was at the main event with Jonathan and Doug Mills, and
Right.
but the thing is because we're still evolving, we're still learning, you still have
Right.
to update. I am not teaching the same clinic I did in 2010. I can tell you that.
For sure.
Right.
Things
That's-
change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
and you got to. But if you think you're done learning and you got nothing else to learn in this thing, you got this game figured out.
Yeah.
Whatever you want today, that's it.
Yeah.
You're done. You might as well just sell your horse and
Right.
call her good.
Yeah. What are I'm kind of going off script a little bit if you're good with that, but what's when you think about from 2010 to now how your clinics have changed, like what are some of the things you're finding most important, most
Most of my clinic is horsemanship.
Yep.
You can't get your horse too broke. But I also say to my girls is that I have never seen a really well broke horse and a really handy girl not win something whole career, and that'll be your high-end horsemanship.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
yeah.
So good. This is a question I was excited to ask you, and we're going back onto script a little bit. What are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life?
When I was before I won that rodeo in Craven, I saw back then in the Western Horseman, because you got to remember that's for the internet. There was a book that was put out called Why We Win, and it was with Lynn McKenzie, Roy Cooper, Walt Woodard, and Donnie Gay. And I asked for that for Christmas. And I tell you that book in particular taught me about the power of the mind. I teach a seminar tomorrow on mental toughness. I'm a certified mental toughness coach.
Yeah.
And and you talk about the power of the mind and the power of positivity. That book is what set me on my road to success. I love the Mind Gym though as well. You can't not read the Mind Gym and not love it.
Right.
It's an old standard in the positive book. And I love Battlefield of the Mind with Joyce Meyer because
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I love Joyce anyway, if you're familiar with Joyce, but it made me tie it into what I do, though, with the Battlefield of the Mind, because so much, I always find that when you're on your road to success, you kind of get some devil's arrows thrown at you.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And that's good. People always say, well, is it because they want me to quit? And it's never about you wanting to quit. It means you just got to try harder.
There's some friction in the
Yeah.
wind.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You would not have that in your heart if you weren't supposed to do it.
Right.
God wouldn't put it there. So
Yeah.
when those detours come at you, just expect it. And I always tell them, my girls too, is like when they show up, you say, oh, you're early. If you're on your way, you want to make the CFR say this year and you get derailed a little bit. You say, oh, you're early. She said you'd come. Or they show up towards the end and you're like, oh, you're late. She said you're coming. And just carry on with it and still stay focused and overcome it.
Right.
And I think that's one thing with Joyce's book. It really made me realize that the battlefield is in your mind.
Yep. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me
that's,
too.
Yeah. Lots of good stuff there.
I'd like to make that talk tomorrow.
I
Mental
know.
toughness. That
Well,
sounds
yeah,
great.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, it's Kylie and I kind of debated at the breakfast table whether this was really a great question or important. And I'll read it so you know what I'm talking about. What are bad recommendations you hear in your profession or area of expertise? And you know, Kylie and I both like to be positive people and focus on the positive.
Yeah, set your mind on what you're looking for, not
Totally.
trying to,
Yeah.
talk about what you're for, not what you're against, because
Yeah.
that idea of what you put your mind on, you're going to put more of that into your world.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, we also thought about how there is a lot of, you know, myths going around in the industry that I think are important, especially for newer horse people, to hear from experienced horse people what might be some pitfalls. So without it being negative, I think it's just
reality.
educational,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. In my industry, it would be always go to more bit. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying keep them in an O-ring. I'm not about O-rings for long. I believe
Okay.
that, you know, that they have their purpose, but colts will get to pushing on them. So, you know, you can over glorify an O-ring. Don't be wrong.
Sure.
But you also don't need to go to a straight up combination bit and get your horse climbing and rearing in the air either.
Right.
You know, you got to check these things out. You know, this is where you know, I can throw a 5-year-old kid up on a horse and have him pull, but it's all in the release that makes you a horsewoman, and knowing when to release and
Yes.
knowing when your horse is pulling back.
Yeah.
And to take the time to learn horsemanship. But so, you know, the women are impulse buyers. That's proven,
yeah.
right? And so you know, I don't take things to my clinics and sell them. It's against
Okay.
what I believe in.
Sure.
I
Okay.
will tell you where to get them, or you know, you can buy them later, but I'm not there to sell stuff. That's
Right.
I'm really against any clinician that does. I mean, I have caps here, and if you want to have a booth, this is a little different scenario, but I'm talking about a 2-day barrel racing. I'm not there to sell you stuff.
Right.
I'm there to sell you, but I'm there to teach you, and if I'm going to sell you something, it's horsemanship.
Sure.
Right. But so quick to just, well, here, put more bit on them.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case. You know, why is he pushing on that bit?
Yep.
Have we figured out what's the deal? You know what? Are you pulling? Are you just always pulling? You never giving any release?
Doling them up.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, to me, definitely something out there that I would like to see change. I'd like to see more horsemanship put back into the barrel racing industry. I love the 3D system. It's been great for barrel racing, don't get me wrong. But somewhere along the way, you know, if you were to go jump horses or ride dressage horses, you just wouldn't enter up. You would go for lessons in a coach, and
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for some reason in the barrel racing industry, I'm going to buy a horse and I'm going to enter up.
Right. That's so.
They
yeah.
underestimate what goes into being
And yet
really
it's
great at
you
it.
know it's to win at a high level. You have to be a great horsewoman. You have to be able to ride, and your horse has to be broke. But yet for some reason, the barrel racing industry is bad for not wanting to have that. You know, get those clinics in, and they just want to enter up. They want to shortcut into. I'm just a barrel racer, and it's like you know, and that's why we've lost the horsemanship out of it. You know, back in the day when I started and we were rodeo girls, I tell you what, if you weren't handy, you didn't rodeo because
Right.
you weren't going to win nothing.
Right.
There was no 1D, 2D, 3D, right?
Sure.
You're just fast or you weren't.
Right.
We run race horses. So I love the 3D industry, so I don't want people to misinterpret that, but
Yeah.
we need to stress that the horsemanship's got to come back into this game. It's hard to watch sometimes because we got big bits and girls hanging on their heads and not, you know, and they're not willing to, you know, they're just a little defensive. In reality, you know, that's what I'm trying to promote is don't be defensive.
Right.
You know, let people help you.
Right.
You can do better.
You can do better. That's
Yeah,
all.
it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I know people want to get defensive right away, and it's just don't. Like
Yeah.
that's a road to nowhere.
Right.
Defensiveness or negativity.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
And like you
kind of
said, we really learn from those failures. It's like, okay, that
Absolutely.
didn't work.
Yeah,
Right.
So let's
absolutely.
find what does.
And there's
Yeah.
so many great horse women in the industry, not just myself. We're very fortunate today that there's a lot of good clinicians up here and
There is.
across the United States. And there's lots of people you can learn from. And I always think that if I take a clinic and I learn one thing that saved me
Yeah.
10 years of school of hard knocks,
Right.
boy, it was a great clinic.
Yep.
You know,
Huge.
Yeah.
right? That I don't have to now learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just to take some clinics and go, not only just don't ride with just barrel racers, I've rode with reiners and I've rode with working cow horse guys and cutters. And you can learn something from everybody.
Yeah.
You just got to be
Totally.
willing to.
Right.
You know?
You know, on that theme of you can learn something from everyone, and I'm just thinking the question was kind of coming into my mind as you're talking about people, they get this fancy horse and they just want to be leveling up maybe faster than their horsemanship would support. What do you see a role for having community around you when you're making those decisions about where you should level up, or how do you make those decisions? How do you, in from that mindset piece, know when you're going too fast, or maybe when you're going too slow, maybe you're not brave enough.
Yeah,
How
if
do
you
find
had
the
an
sweet spot
actual
there?
coach or clinician
Sure.
that you trusted, they would direct you.
Right.
But I often see that doesn't happen,
Sure.
right? Or I see a girl that, bought a horse and had success, and then she's putting on clinics, but she has no idea how that horse was made. And so she's out there trying to teach girls, and so she's just telling them to, put more bit on them or whatever, right?
Sure.
And that's what needs to change in our industry.
Yeah.
I'm nothing against that, but there should be, it should be that there's no shortcuts. If you're gonna,
that's
you
so
can't.
good.
Not everybody like myself could afford. My dad, I always said, my dad, I can't afford one of those big money horses. He goes, no, but somebody somewhere trained that horse, and you can go ride with her and figure out how to make one like it.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's
Right.
very cool.
Yeah.
Instead of being hung up on who's in the limelight. I think these trainers need to come into the limelight a little bit, and they're the ones that you need to ride with, because those
Yeah.
girls know how to make horses.
That's very cool. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, I think just like that, we're close to our last question.
Okay.
Yeah. We are curious to know what is one of the best or most.
I teach clinics, as you know, coast to coast in this
Right.
country, and everybody, everywhere I go, the one thing I'll ask them a goal of the clinic, and I mean, half the clinic will be like confidence.
Right.
I'm here for confidence.
Sure.
Well, knowledge does bring you confidence, but there's more to it. And in order for me to reach those and do my job better, I felt that I needed to be certified and learn.
Yeah.
So I reached out and became certified.
How did you find that training? What were you looking for? How did it come
I
to
was
you?
looking for a sports training,
Yeah.
not a psychology type thing,
Yep.
because I needed to learn. I learned from Colin Henderson, who is a former wide back receiver for Washington State.
Yeah.
And he coaches, guys in the NFL and the Major Baseball and all of that. And he's
Very good.
athletes. That's what he does.
Yeah.
And he does he does really well with it. But I had to reach out to him and get certified from him because he got it. He understood it.
Yeah.
He understood the athlete's mind.
Yes.
Although it's a different event, it still is that. So I reached out, and I mean, he's really cool, and just really, I kind of had to put it kind of more into my world a little bit.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, a lot of the things that he taught me, I'll bring in tomorrow in the course, and it's quite
Right.
amazing. I've brought some into my level 2 clinics already, and the girls, and they're just like, wow, we just didn't realize how much my mind was holding me back.
Isn't that crazy? If we can just kind of get out of our own way and let our horses shine.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of times we have the ability and we have everything in front of us, but it just, our mind holds us back. So,
Totally. Yeah. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, Marci, I've heard before, like Tony Robbins likes to say that like anything that you're doing, it's like 80% psychology and then 20% actually like how to get it done.
yeah.
Would you agree with that? Like, is that kind of what
Absolutely.
you're saying?
Yeah, I saw a thing with Joe Beaver the other day, and he said, you win from the neck down, but you compete from the neck down, you win from the neck up, right?
Oh,
that's how
that's
you
good.
win.
Yeah.
There's so many great, like he's me, and there's just so many great ropers out there. But what sets the winners apart was,
Right.
And I always think of Trevor Brazil too. I think Trevor Brazil had a strong mental game. That's what made Trevor. But I also think he was a great horseman. He used to train barrel horses before he started to rope.
Wow,
And so
cool.
his
Didn't know that.
horsemanship was higher than, I mean, he ropes as good as everybody. I'm not knocking, but I do believe that Trevor's mental game was stronger, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
And he was a little better horseman than some of them.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it kind of comes full circle. Makes me think of when you're able to take failures in and learn from them. You're building a foundation.
Exactly.
That's pretty
It's
solid.
just like a brick house. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's
Yep.
a rock to stand on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
That's
you
so
bet.
cool.
Little faith doesn't hurt either.
Yeah.
No,
that's
a lot of
very
faith
true.
helps. A whole lot of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything else you'd like to share?
I just
leave
want to
with us?
thank all of you and the Horse Expo for having us, having me back. I said, I stand in the test of time. I guess I'm like fine wine. I just keep rolling along.
Yeah.
But it's been great, and I appreciate both of your time. It's been so needed in our industry. So thank you
Cool.
both.
This has been such a delight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
And it
every
wasn't all
time.
that scary.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear.
I'm so
Yes,
glad.
that's success. We'll
Thank
take
you.
that. That's
Yeah, thank
awesome.
you for being open and willing to share
Yeah.
with all of us.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you guys, and have
Yeah.
a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right,
too.
take care.
All right, we have one more announcement for you all before we head out. We actually, in our schedule, Jill Barron was supposed to be with us next in the Horseman's Hot Seat, and that's been a bit of a switch around. She won't be with us. There's not going to be a Horseman's Hot Seat at 10:30. That's canceled.
Instead, Jill will be in the Cowboy Shit Arena doing the interview with them.
Yes.
So tune in there for Jill.
Yeah, right. So that'll be there, and then we'll be back later this afternoon. So come on back and
With Dana Hawkana.
yes,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thanks again, Marci. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming, guys.